There we go. All right. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here today. It is, what day are we today? We're May 12th. I don't know when you started to self-isolate. For me, it was May 13th. So we're almost 2 months in. And today we have a super special guest with us, Kari Dunlop. Before I get into her intro, in case any of you are wondering what you're doing here, my name is Tanya Woods Richardson, and I'm the host of our show today, which is called In the Matrix with Kari specifically. And the purpose of this show, the purpose of this program is really about introducing you to the experts like Kari, who can give us some insight and perspective on one of the three realms of money mastery. So we're either looking at money management, money mindset, or money motivation. And I think the work Kari's doing here today definitely touches on our money mindset, but we'll also move in to some of the reprogramming techniques and healing techniques. So we're going to be talking about money motive. So thank you all for being here, for having the courage to click on Zoom and having the courage to hear what Kari has to say, because this is a conversation that is going to go deep. This is not surface for sure, but so exciting, and definitely creates a whole new level of awareness. So welcome, Kari. Thank you for being here in the midst of COVID. For those of you that don't know Kari and I actually go way back. I think it's 20 years now, isn't it? It goes way back, not that long. We're not dating ourselves here. But Kari, certified functional medicine health coach, right?
Yep.
That's how we put it together. And when Kari and I first started working together, we connected on so many levels, but definitely this whole idea of integrating all of these different modalities to really being able to live the best life possible, right? And when was it that I was introduced to Mark Wolynn's work? I'm going to speak about Mark Wolynn here for a moment, because if you're in the Matrix and you've done week 2, all of you know that I basically carry Mark's textbook with me everywhere. It didn't start with you. And Kari's the one who introduced me to Mark, because Kari is, do I dare say publicist? Right hand
Communications, I don't know, it's me and him, so
it's, yeah. And so it was because of you, and I'm so grateful that you introduced me to Mark's work, and I got the opportunity to sit in one of Mark's circles when he was in Calgary. He's from San Francisco, and people from around the world, I think there was 50 people in that group from around the world, got to know each other for a weekend and really feel and experience the impact of a break in the bond with the mom and what that does. And we all came in there as strangers, and we all left as really good friends. And so how did you first get introduced to Mark?
Through my own health challenge. So my functional medicine doctor sent me to his workshop 10 years ago. And I sat in that room. My background is, before that, was working in film and television. And I sat there and my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, oh my gosh, you can't script this stuff, because it sounds too unreal. It just, and he's so, I call him scary smart. He's such a master, and I'm just, the gratitude I have for him. And even just for the challenge, really just puts, John DeMartini has a saying that you can't have one side of a magnet. There's always, whether you have an opportunity, there's a downside. And if there's a negative situation, there's like that proverbial silver lining. So Mark was definitely one of my silver linings through this crazy health challenge that I had. So what I learned, it's changed everything for me.
Wow. And for me too, I know that, through some of his teachings and, how he explained the break in the bond, the impact of the break in the bond, and then different ways to heal it. There are some crazy stories, some crazy dreams, and some things that you couldn't put it together. You couldn't have planned it the way that Mark had unraveled it all for us. So can we explain who is Mark and the significance of his impact on you? Because I feel like we're using his name now, and some people probably aren't aware of who he is, and then how that taps into the work that you're doing, and why everyone's here today about the break in the bond with the mom specifically.
Sure, yeah. So Mark Wolynn is North America's go-to guide, the expert in the field of inherited family trauma, probably globally, but he likes, I would say globally, he's too humble to say that, but He's certainly traveled the world, and it came again through his own health challenge. He had some vision problems, and he talks about it in his book, which came out about 4 years ago. But he had a rare vision problem, and the ophthalmologist said, there's nothing they could do. So he gave away the keys to his company and went in search for healing. And he tried all kinds of things, and then met Bert Hellinger, who's sort of the founding father of family constellation work, which was the workshop that you had attended. So Mark facilitates workshops, but also this work can be done one-on-one, and you can even do it yourself and work your way through his book. It takes you through his whole process, which is brilliant. And I remember I got, in that workshop, there was people with, stage 4 cancer and just really intense things. And I was like, I can't eat. And I thought, there's no way that I'm just going to sit here and learn what I can. And he pulled me up in the chair first, and I didn't know what happened afterwards. He talks about how sometimes the best chair in the room is the one where you can observe. And I totally get that, because when you're having all of that, it can be really inundating for the nervous system, which is a piece of some of the fallout that happens when we have a break in the bond. So Mark has 4 dynamics that he works with in terms of how love can get stalled or thwarted in the family system. And what I love about his work is that nothing's personal. It's like any child born into your family in that birth order would have received the same parenting. And so it's only because a trauma happened. And not to belittle, the word trauma at all, but it's, and I always, the sentence I like to use is like, unless you kind of peel back the layers and look behind to see what precipitated the behaviors, it's like we live life like looking at the sky through a straw. We only see one piece. And this work really expands and opens up like the aperture, finds the missing piece of the puzzle, so to speak. So, there's lots of different metaphors, but, and there's a hierarchy. So there's, we can merge with a parent, we can reject a parent, we can identify with another family member, or we can have a break in the bond. And sometimes we have all 4. And so there's a hierarchy in how we work with the dynamics. He calls these the 4 unconscious themes. But the break in the bond is so pervasive that because we have a break with our mom, or we can have a break with or inherit the break from our mom's mom or our dad's mom. And so when we have a break like this, we also have a break with ourselves. So
perfect. Well, not perfect, but no. I love that we're getting into this, because a lot of people will ask me about the father side, right? Because we're always talking about our relationship with mom, and what's the impact of our dad's relationship with his mother, and then our relationship. But let's start at the beginning and actually talk about the relationship with our mother and the significance of that. And I don't know if you want to touch on how that impacts our relationship with money. But then, what breaks in the bond can look like. So maybe if we start the significance of the early relationship with our mom.
So our mom is everything. And like you said, the dad is important, but the dad's place comes later, because we spend 9 months, percolating in our mom's womb. And our relationship with our mom is a template for so many things. It's money. It's feeling safe, it's being able to receive, it's health, it's the blueprint for also our intimate relationships. So whatever is unresolved with our mom gets projected onto our partners. If we don't feel safe, a lot of that goes back to that early break in the bond. And there's so many factors. It's, sometimes there's definitely more than one thing we can tick off the box, but if mom experiences a trauma while she's pregnant with us. So because there's 3 generations sharing one biological environment, because when our grandmother's pregnant with our mom, at 5 months, when our mom is 5 months in utero, the egg that becomes us is already inside our mom's womb. So whatever trauma happens to grandma when she's pregnant with our mom can be felt energetically through the system. But just looking at, so if there's any physical or emotional separations, we're in an incubator. Adoption, of course, is the ultimate break in the bond. So this is from conception to 10 years of age. And
Sorry, can I just jump? Did you say adoption is the ultimate break in the bond? And maybe what I will jump in here and say, because I know a lot of this is going to be heavy, that we are getting into how we start to repair all of this, right?
Yes, yeah, we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah. So in case you're like, what is going on? And there's no hope for me. Like, we're just explaining, we're putting down the framework to understand what the relevance of this is, and then how we can start to heal it and attune so that we can start to change it for ourselves without having to do all of this deep therapy with our mom specifically and get both of us on a couch. And
I want to say, healing is an internal movement. We can never expect our parents to change, because chances are they're not going to. And so it's just a reorientation of how we can receive something from them.
Yes.
In real life, or just do it for ourselves. So there's lots of opportunities and options. And whether your mom is alive or has passed on, healing, I mean, ask me about that mice study later. So
okay. So we're seeing that the relationship is paramount. And I know with a lot of the clients in the matrix, this is tell me what you think about this, but in the work that I've been doing, where I see most people struggle is in not saving, not investing, right? They just don't have the money set aside for long-term security, nor are they putting money aside in their savings. And so both the savings is short-term security, the investing is long-term security, and the vast majority of us resist doing it. There's a number of excuses we make, right? We don't have the money, or we need to buy that instead. But it's always been my belief, understanding your work and Mark's work, that it's really because at the basis of our programming is this knowing, this familiarity with not feeling safe, go ahead. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also a question I like to pose is, like, money being a metaphor, is like, what was there really never enough of?
Okay.
So as I continue to talk, just kind of file that in your back of your mind, because really so let me finish the sort of the there's just so much to say in terms of the way that the break can show up, and then I'll talk about what wealth is for a baby, because that's again how it shows up. So it's any emotional or physical break with mom. Adoption, like I said, babies put in an incubator. As a 5, 6, 7-year-old, you go get your tonsils out. There's a younger sibling who's sick. And so anything that basically takes mom's attention away from you to something else. If she loses a parent or a brother, or mom and dad are fighting while she's pregnant, if she miscarries before you or gives the baby away before you, her fear of, is this baby gonna be okay? And so she's maybe holding off her attunement until baby is born and she knows that, it got through this pregnancy all right. So that's those are the major sort of categories. So, but yeah, like I said, basically anything that takes away mom's attention or attunement.
Right.
And mom and dad can go on vacation. You're raised by your aunt and uncle. You're raised by your grandma. All those things. And it's interesting because what happens is you as a baby or a young child, or like I said, it goes up until the age of 10. But, let's say mom and dad, or mom goes back to work too early. And because all the moms are like, oh my God, but you only need 30% attunement. We're going to look at a video later. And Dr. Tronick is the one who conducts a still face experiment. And he's the one who also says you only need 30% attunement, and it's always repairable. So just want to preface all of this with information. Yeah. So let's say mom and dad go away on vacation and they come back, and little Jenny, all of a sudden they find their little girl is very independent, and they mistaken that as a good thing. It's like, oh, look, she can do it all on her own. But underneath that, that's really just a defense for not being able to trust in mom's care anymore. It's like mom went away and now she's not there for me, so I'm just going to do it on my own. And so some other things that come out of that in terms of behaviors as we grow up, because they were initially coping mechanisms or defense strategies, is people pleasing, because we're so, I don't want to use the word desperate, but kinda, for any threat of connection. And so we set ourselves aside and we'll say yes to everything because we're scared to lose connection yet again. So
right. So it's how we earned the acceptance or the validation or that love, right, from the mother specifically in those early years tends to show up for us as we start living our life, entering our career, earning money, right? Starts to replicate there.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are you?
Because, oh, so I just want to, because for a baby, and we'll look at a video again later, just to, as, because it's one thing to talk about, but when you see it, it's so visceral, and it just, you can just tell from the inside out about what most of us potentially missed out on. And again, it's all repairable. So for a baby, wealth for a baby is a consistent attunement, love, attention from its mom. So when a child feels that, it's a form of ecstasy and wealth. And so when mom's attention is taken away or unpredictable or just disengaged, the child can experience a form of emotional bankruptcy. And so they've even done studies of, like I said earlier, I think that even in utero, a fetus will reorganize itself if it senses mom is sad. And so again, the roots of people pleasing coming from very early on in.
Mm-hmm. I think it was Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza I was listening to, that was talking about the fetus development in those early stages. If that emotional environment does not feel safe to the fetus, to us as a child, the development is actually going from our prefrontal cortex into overdeveloping the primitive brainstem, right? The primitive part of the brain, in addition to starting to not overdevelop, but the development goes into the limbs, into the arms and legs. And so he was explaining, in essence, it's building this little mini warrior inside as a fetus, right? And I'm always fascinated by the language that a lot of women use. And I know you want to speak to a little bit about badges that we use, but some of the language I hear is we take great pride in being so strong and being able to do it all ourselves, and that we can get through anything. And I hear this now because this was language I always used, and I'm like, uh-oh, that's the warrior. And maybe can you talk about how, because sometimes, again, we take strength in the warrior and we're proud of the warrior, but when we warrior up, sometimes we also armor up, right? And that armor not only protects us on occasion, but it can also prevent things from coming in. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So those are defenses we adopt unconsciously early on when, again, we've lost trust in our mom's love, attention, care, all of those things. So we go up through life thinking, yeah, I can do it on my own. I don't need to ask for help. I can, do it. And that, shows up in is entrepreneurs in business in terms of, oh my God, I have to go to the, I can't ask for help. I can't ask for money. I can't ask, investor to look at this. So yeah, it's not helpful. And it's a very telltale sign of the break in the bond. Because a lot of questions I get asked is like, what if I don't know my family history? And we always come back and say, whatever you know is enough. Because when a trauma happens, it bypasses the frontal lobes and gets stored in fragments as emotions and feelings and patterns that repeat in our life. So there's definitely ways to look, it's important to look at the history and what happened. Mark, become a detective of your family history and shake the family tree and see what falls out. But whatever you know is enough, because your life is, it shows up all over your life, whether it's, like I said, relationships or health or feeling safe. Waiting for the other shoe to drop is also another one, because of that inconsistency and attunement. It's like something good happens and it's like, oh, I can't trust in the good thing because something's going to take it away. And and another thing I forgot to mention in terms of breaks in the bond is our birth. Did mom have a tough labor? Were we, were forceps used? Was it, stressful pregnancy. So again, that's just another way that a break can happen. And in all of that, as a fetus, we're bathing in cortisol for that whole time. And so another telltale sign is just I call it meerkat mode, from the Lion King, the little, it's a little animal that lives in, I think, Australia, but this is him. And that's because our stress, because of epigenetics, the dials of our stress response are set to 10, because we may have had, this is kind of looking at the inherited trauma piece as well, but we might have had a grandparent who had gone to war and he needed that skill set to survive. And so because of epigenetics, we're born into that. And we're not born with a clean hard drive. We're born with an operating system that has the content of the emotional residue or the unresolved traumas of our family. And, like I said, we could have gotten lots of great mothering from our mom, but there could have been a break in the bond between her and her mom. So we can inherit that break, even though we had a great lots of, attunement from our
lots
mom.
of love, so it sounds like there's 3 ways that we can get the programming, right? The break in the bond that gets passed down. It sounds like either the inherited programming, so this goes back 3 generations. So what might have happened when our grandmother was carrying our mother, then that gets developed in her cells, then she passes that on to us. Or when we're in that fifth month of our mother being developed, right? So there's the inherited piece. There's then the in utero piece. So now our official first environment is in utero for 9 months. Whatever she's experiencing, like you said, all of the things with potential miscarriages beforehand, abortions, adoptions, stress in her relationship, right, with your dad. I know Mark also talks about if her parents are not healthy, right?
She's got a sick mom. Like, again, anything.
Right. Anything that's distracting her.
Yeah, if she was the youngest of 10 kids, because, at that time, mom didn't have a lot of juice when the 10th baby comes. So,
so then all of those things, we're saying then you're saying that leads to us feeling that our environment is not safe, or there isn't attunement. You're using the language attunement. Our attunement is broken. The bond is broken. Attunement equals bond. Okay, so the bond is broken. And then also, those early years, 0 to 2, I guess, is what you're talking about.
10, actually, 0 to 10.
So 0 to 2, though, we can't rationalize, right? So
we have no memory. So typically people will remember stuff that happens later, like, my parents divorced when I was 6, or, my brother who got sick when I was 3. But typically, because these patterns pass unconsciously, the probability of something happening in utero is really high. And so that's the stuff we don't remember, but it lives in our nervous system. And so definitely something not to be discounted. It's sort of the stuff that happens later tends to amplify the stuff that happens
earlier. So how do we, I know this question is going to come up if it hasn't already, how do we start to identify what might have happened, where the bond got broken? Is it important to understand where the bond got broken? Do we do that work, or is that not?
It can be helpful for sure. Like, anytime you can name something, it helps to shift traction away from the stress response, the limbic lockdown, into prefrontal cortex. So if we can, just having the context is like, okay, I'm not imagining it. It's not like I'm just wired this way. It's like there's a reason for the way I react or behave, etc.
Gotcha. And so in those early years, the 0 to 2, do you feel, so that the lingo that's coming to me is object permanence, right? This idea that when we're young and we 0 to 2, when we can't rationalize, mom's just gone to the kitchen, she's going to be right back.
Mm-hmm.
And mom actually is out of the room, the baby's brain actually senses that mom is gone, right?
Yeah.
So
So
how is it that it affects us if that's repeated? Can we heal it? And so for all the new moms out there that are afraid to leave the room right now with their baby in the little bouncer, how
mhm.
how do we how do we repair that? Is that possible to repair?
Oh yeah, you can. Like I said, Edward, according to Edward Tronick, and maybe we can show the video too.
Yeah. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, let's show the video, and then
Okay.
it just gives you such a visceral
Okay.
sense of what we're talking about here.
I'm going to try this. We'll see. I know Zoom doesn't oftentimes like when we've got too many things going on at once here. Sorry, here we go. This is the one. Now, maybe some of you saw this online the other day because Kari sent this to me yesterday and I'm like, whoa, this is so powerful. This is why people need to be on this call. So let's see if we can. Hopefully this will like us today. Can you see it, Kari?
Yeah.
Can you see my screen? Okay. It's a short video. If it decides to load.
It'll load. There we go.
Oh, you know what though? Yeah,
Oh,
it's not going to play volume. I forgot about that. It doesn't play volume when we're in Zoom. Okay.
I've done it in sessions.
Oh, have you? You know,
Yeah.
do you know how to do it without spending too much time on trying to figure that out?
I just like click it and play it, but um, but maybe even I don't know. It could be worth because it's the visuals of the moms and the babies and how I mean it's great to hear the voiceover of Dr. Tronick, but
Yeah.
can even send the link out
So yeah,
after.
we'll send the link after, but you'll see, so what Kari's talking about here, you'll see that the mother, they're doing a study and the mother's asked to engage with the child, right? And I know that Dr. Tronick, is that his name, Kari?
Yeah, Edward Tronick. Yeah.
Edward Tronick. So
Dr.
his voiceover, do you want to do the voiceover on this, Kari? Explain us what we're seeing, or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay.
And I can pop in. But I mean, this was originally done in the 60s and they've replicated it. And yeah, so here the mom and the baby are engaging and then just.
So it's quite amazing when he's doing the voiceover, he speaks of how this little beautiful girl here is trying to get her attention, right? And she's trying to do all the things that she did before where she got a response and an emotional connection with the mom. And now she's getting frustrated, right? And she's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you reacting? And she starts to cry here and she's trying everything. She's pulling out all of her tools, right? Trying so hard.
And this is just for 2 minutes.
Ah!
So, and the mom is just doing everything she can not to engage and it's killing her. And the baby is doing everything she can to try and engage the mom and just to no avail. And so the fact that this is just a slice of 2 minutes compared to
a lifetime
of what
oh.
I really encourage you to watch it because it just yeah, it really brings home what we're talking about here. And we're going to show you the happy video after of what, and we can use this as a tool because so many of us didn't get this, but of what this bonding and and you can see the wealth in the babies. Do you want to show it now? Should we just show it now?
No, I think maybe we'll leave it because I don't think the audio is gonna work. And
you want me to try it? I can maybe try and play that one later.
Yeah, maybe later, but I think like you were saying, the impact when you see it, and we'll send the link out, it really is that you realize the profound impact that the connection of the mother has, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's everything. And it really took me a long time. It took me, because I have a great mom. She just had lots of trauma. So it really took me a long time to kind of get my head around it. But then I started kind of peeling back the layers and how, you know, the money struggles and the health struggles and the feeling safe. And like even taking a holiday for me is hard because I just think that, you know, the plane's going to crash. I'm always surprised when the plane lands. So it's pervasive, like I said, this breaking the bond. And it's healable, and we only need 30 for all, you know, all the new moms and the young moms, and it's all healable. So and just in terms of some of the studies they've done, Isabel Mansuet is a researcher from the University of Zurich, and she did so a lot of studies are done with mice because for mice 12 weeks is a generation, so it can be replicated within a relatively short period of time compared to humans. And so all they did for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of life, they took the mice pups away from their mom for 3 hours a day. And then the mice started to show signs of depression, and the depression worsened as the mice aged. The same researcher did another study with mice who had been taken away from their mom. This is such an awful study to talk about, but it just reaps so much value in terms of information. But they put the depressed mice who'd been taken away from their moms in a bowl of water, and then mice who'd had proper bonding with their mama mice in another bowl. And the mice who'd had the appropriate bonding were able to get out of the water. And then the bowl with the mice who didn't have the bonding with their mom didn't even try to get out of the bowl of water. So then the happy news is the same researcher did a study, subsequent study, and she put the mice who'd been removed from the nurturing of their mom into positive environments, and they were able to resolve their symptoms. So,
wow.
A bit of a...
So again, we know that there's help, right?
Yeah.
That there's something we can do. So we'll talk about that. Is it okay if we just take a few minutes? I know there's a story in here that someone wants to see where there might be a connection. And then I'm happy to share some of my experiences as well, but maybe we can talk a little bit about how this shows up for people, because I think sometimes people aren't really aware of their current behavior and how that might attach to the break of the bond, right? Yeah. But Heather, I'm going to share this because you did, oh no, sorry, I totally blew that one. So I'll come back to that. But there's, maybe can you speak to adoption, right? Because when I know there's a lot of members in the matrix that have been adopted and are trying to figure out again what impact that might have on their life and obviously now their relationship with their kids. Any feedback on that?
Well, so the stressor, there's obviously a common denominator,
yeah,
stressor in terms of the adoption, but it can show up differently. And that's what's so brilliant about Mark's work, is that in working through the intake questions, one of them being, what's your worst fear? So a lot of people who have the break in the bond, whether it's they were put in an incubator or adopted, it can show up in terms of their worst fear of being abandoned or alone or having trouble with relationships, anger issues potentially. So, and one of the tenets of the work, this work, which goes again back to Bert Hellinger, is that no one's allowed to be excluded from the system. And this doesn't mean we ever put ourselves in a dangerous situation. We never throw ourselves in front of a moving train. And it doesn't excuse anything that happens, but it does explain. And so from when we're able to kind of connect the dots from our issue, whether it's money or health or feeling safe or secure, being able to receive, that's the breadcrumb trail that we use to connect back to where the trauma is. And like I said, we can have one or more of these themes that Mark developed, but the break always trumps everything, because that's the first place to work, because it's the foundation for the other pieces of the family story puzzle.
So let's talk about that. Let's see if we can throw out some breadcrumbs for people, because I know when you sent me these texts yesterday, and you said there was something in one of your texts that definitely hit me, right? Like it, and I think that's one of the big aha moments for people, is that when you're reading something, even if you're reading something or you're watching this and you're getting this little, oh, what was that, right? Mm-hmm. Be aware that there might be something there for you to investigate. But let me pull this up, because you had said, I'm going to read this. You said the baby's wealth is the mom's emotional attunement. So how wealthy we're feeling as a baby is typically how wealthy our mother felt emotionally, right? Was she going through? Okay, so we break that down. How we receive her love is the blueprint for how we receive abundance and wealth. So how we take that in, just a question on that, because I know that at some point we have to take on the responsibility of how we chose to receive that information. Or as babies, do we always receive it the same way? At what point do we make assumptions?
And what else? A lot of it will depend on mirroring how our mom is, because we're born and we're born and we're so dependent on our mom for everything. We have no sense of self. So when we cry, our mom looks at us and goes, "Oh, are you sad?" And we're like, "Oh, this means I'm sad." And so when there's you're happy, you're drawing a piece, artwork, and your mom goes, "Oh, that's lovely. You love to draw." And it's like, "Oh, me like to draw." So when there's a break, all of that goes missing. And so we're kind of left to fend for ourselves and defend for ourselves. But like I said, there's even with adoption, there's ways to even just energetically repair the bond. And do you want to talk about that now?
We can, yeah. When you mentioned that, one thing that came to mind is just, you mentioned how as a mom we can always say, "Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful." And then there's some moms or parents out there that might be seeing the gaps, right? That, "Oh, sure, if you could just use this color," or.
Yeah, the narcissistic mom would say something like, "Oh, but I love to draw. Do you want to see one of my pictures?" Or the non, just the really disconnected mom's like, or distorted mirroring. "Oh, let's grab your coat. We got to go to the dentist." So there's all kinds of ways that moms make mistakes. And again, a really big piece of Mark's work, and this is a no fault modality, because we're always looking behind, because it really, we hear that saying all the time. It's like she could only do the best she could. And this is really the heart of the matter, is like our moms could only give us the mothering that they received. And so it's that compassion is the doorway, because if it frees us from the story, it frees us from being a victim. There's actually a Harvard Mastery of Stress study, and it's a 20-year longitudinal study, and it goes into the health ramifications if we reject a parent for a significant length of time. The chances of us having a chronic illness is like 99%. So, and like I said before, it's not about putting yourself in front of a moving train. It's being the brain with a negativity bias. Dr. Rick Hansen talks about the brain being Mother Nature's well-intended learning device, because the amygdala is always trying to keep us safe. And so that's what we tend to remember, is the bad stuff, right? Because of the negativity bias. There's a girl, so one of the, there's a gal I had met who'd been to several of Mark's workshops, and if we're okay to kind of jump into one of the resolution pieces.
Let's do it. I agree. Let's go.
Her story is just such a beautiful example. So one of them is to, if you can, find a photo of your mom when she was young and vibrant and lots of energy, and put it on the, either on the nightstand that's on the left side of the bed, or on the wall above you. And before you go to sleep, I'm just going to read this because I don't want to miss a sentence, but and you can do this whether your mom is alive or if she's passed on, or if you don't even know your mom. But it's just like, it's a meditation exercise that helps to build back the trust that was lost because of the break. So mom, and before you go to bed is a great time when your brain is really plastic. So that's why we recommend doing this at night. But Mom, please hold me while I sleep and heal the bond that broke between us. Teach me how to trust your love, how to receive it, how to let it in, so I can now allow the good things in life to come without sabotaging or pushing them away. So that's just a nightly exercise. And sometimes if you had a tumultuous relationship with your mom, then you can put the picture really, really high on the wall, because it's kind of like titrating, right? So there was a gal that I had met in a workshop, and she'd been to 3 workshops, and Mark had never worked with her. She just sat, because of mirror neurons, anytime we see something new, our brain can use it as a as a way to rewire its programming. So she's like, Kari, I just went and did what Mark said. I'm like, wow, Jane, what happened? She goes, well, the backstory is she lost her mom when she was 17, and she wasn't in a positive, nurturing relationship. She goes, well, I had to put the picture up really, really high on the wall, and I couldn't even look at the eyes in the photo. I just couldn't, but I just trusted Mark, and I did what he said. I was like, okay. And she goes, and then all of a sudden, she goes, the eyes in the photo started to change. They started to soften after she did this work. And I can hardly tell the story without crying. And she goes, and then all of a sudden I started to remember all the good stuff I'd done with my mom. She taught me how to sew, and that's the trick, or that's the tip. It's the healing is it's an internal movement, because like I said, we never can expect our parents to change, and we need to take their love however they can give it. So if your mom loves to cook, then you it's like reorienting yourself, and you take that bowl of soup and you just imagine her love kind of infusing you as you eat it. We also talk about how, because of the trauma that happens in a system, love, where it would flow normally at 100% and maybe only flows at 2%, and you just take your cup and you fill it and you hold it under the faucet until it fills up. And so you just really marinate and milk whatever goodness you can. And because the brain doesn't know the source of something, whether it's real or imagined, I would do exercises where, and this probably happened, but I would just imagine my mom reading to me as a little kid, and I would feel the fabric of her house coat, and I would smell the cookies and the coffee, and I would hear her voice reading, and I would use that scenario, and I would take that energy and I would add a color to it and a texture. This is all like neuroplasticity, little tools that help to create new neural pathways. And I would just take that energy and I would just like literally bathe in it, whether it was like wrapping myself in a big duvet, or feeling like I was under a waterfall. So those are a couple of the tricks. There's also one, again, so the gold medal exercise would be to go and lay your head in your mom's lap and just receive from her. And Mark actually did that. And he said, it's so worth reading his book, because he talks about how it was like being in a bear, because he has breaks in the bond all over his system. But he knew he was told actually several times in different circumstances to go home and heal with his parents. And at first he was like, yeah, whatever. And then when it happened again in another country, it was like, okay, maybe I better pay attention. So he actually, like, God bless you, he actually laid in his mother's lap, and he just would, because so much of what we struggle with is because of the feelings we fight against. We're not willing to tolerate something uncomfortable for a minute or 30 seconds even. We distract ourselves, or we go eat, or we go shop, but if we can tolerate and sit with the uncomfortable feelings, then they pass and we move through them and we just move on to the next piece. But I love Rick Hansen says, if he has something called the cringe meter, and if it makes you uncomfortable, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. So anyway, so Mark went and did that, and he just breathed through it, and he felt the feelings and let them pass, and then let them come up again and let them pass. But for a lot of people, it's working with your own inner kid and reparenting what we didn't get. And so, and it's like building back your core, because when you have a break with your mom, like I said earlier, you have a break with yourself, and we have no sense of who we are. And once we build back that core, because our core is where self-esteem comes from, self-confidence, self-care, all those things where we kind of are putting ourselves first, and we're full of, it's like shock absorbers, mm-hmm. internal shock absorbers. Mm-hmm. And so I always, when you take your non-dominant hand, and wherever you're feeling anxious or uptight or upset, or there's a constriction, take your non-dominant hand, put it there, say it's your heart, and then you take your other hand and put it in the second hot spot. And the words to use here, this is how you reparent yourself. So the words to use are, I've got you, I'm here with you, I'll breathe with you until you feel safe, seen, and heard. Aww. And you do that minimum 6 times a day for a minute. And that's what I did. That's how I got myself back. So
that's huge. I'll have to get those words
yeah,
after so we can, because I know in the Matrix we have this one bonus round exercise that's called the rescue mission. And it's about going back and getting that little person where, there's a point, and maybe you can speak to this, but there's a point where we think our whole life is in front of us, right? And we're like, we can do anything we want. And then it just kind of slowly feels like it erodes. And maybe it's because we were told no, or maybe it's because, you're not coloring within the lines or whatever that is. And so it's just about going back. And it's very similar to what you said. It's, you just sit there and you hold that little person and you just, like you said, just being there, and I've got you, and we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And yeah.
Because what happens is because the amygdala is like scanning all the time, right, for threats and incoming and tigers and whatever.
Yeah.
But when it knows that we have us and we feel safe, it can calm down.
Yeah.
It can like take a breather. And so that's what down regulates the stress response as well. So, and that's, of course, when we're in parasympathetic, that's where all the healing happens. So as much time as we can hang out there, the more beneficial the world. Like,
it is. And I think too, it's, one of the things that we do in week 3 is always about the more we can reprogram our subconscious to know what safety feels like, what love feels like, what security feels like, then it starts to make decisions that work, right? Better decisions on our behalf, because we can't control all the decisions we make every day, but it just starts doing what it starts to feel familiar with.
Well, and here's another tip for the people pleasers. And when and like boundary work and all that stuff is just, builds on all these.
Makes you cringe.
Yeah. But it's so important. And I remember hearing from one of Mark's workshops, he had a colleague talking, and she says, when you have this break and your default behavior is always putting yourself aside. When the first time or the first few times you start saying no, it will feel like a death inside. And oh my God, it does. It's just, you feel the fear and do it anyways, as trite as that sounds, but it's just goes to show how ingrained all of that is. And something we, especially with business decisions, and trying to break the pattern of just saying yes, being a yes man, is whoever is, in your situation, you're being asked something of you. It's like, let me sit with that. I'll get back to you in 24 hours, which is another huge exercise, because we're so quick to go, what can I do for you? What can I do for you?
Right. A form of distraction, right? I was asked that the other day. Well, what are some of the ways that we procrastinate, or the excuses we use to really keep us in that state of not earning money, right? And again, it's just like you're saying, all the self-worth issues, right? The not feeling safe issues, how we earn money, what we earn, charging a price, getting ourselves paid, right? Putting ourselves first. I can't tell you how many women I work with that are so uncomfortable to pay themselves first. They're like, no, all the employees first, and then all the vendors, and then whatever's left at the end of all of that, if there's anything left, then I'll pay myself. Right? Like, it's,
we don't want anybody not to like us.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah,
Before we end, there was, I remember that you wanted to speak to just the 4 different ways. So when we've got a break and a bond, there's 4 ways that was it a mesh, resist?
Those are the 4 unconscious themes.
4 unconscious themes. Yeah. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So there's 4 ways that life force gets thwarted in a family system. So we can merge with a parent. So alcoholic dad, alcoholic son, depressed mom, depressed daughter, and the genders can cross over.
And sorry, we merge because it's like a defense mechanism, right? We want to feel their pain.
Loyalty. It's like because unconscious loyalty.
Okay.
So because one of the themes is that I don't. It's hard to do better than a parent. You want to stay small, because that's what the system does. And so to kind of break away and
Gotcha.
go on to do, to have maybe more success in a family member is, very much one of the big
Make sure everyone's paying attention to that one. That's a big one. Okay. Guilt over doing better than a parent. Okay. Number one, we merge.
Yeah. So, and it's repeating the same life events, and then rejecting a parent, like I said, is very detrimental, because what happens is that shows up in 3 different ways. So we'll bring in a partner that we project all our stuff on, we perceive that, and then we also do to ourselves what we perceive was done to us.
Sorry, we do to ourselves what we
So
perceive.
if we felt we were ignored growing up, we'll ignore parts of ourselves.
Okay. And others.
And others, yeah. Yeah. And we'll even turn, so just going back to the partner piece, we can turn a frog or a prince into a frog because of our hypervigilance. We're waiting for them to mess it up, to screw it up, because we don't trust them, that kind of thing. So that's a very common situation.
And I think too, the rejecting, I've heard stories of where clients were just so angry at their upbringing, right? Like just so the boom and bust situations and getting put into a state of poverty or getting abused and just saying, never friggin' again am I ever gonna live this, right? And so the anger and resentment against that story. And is that what you're referring to as well with rejecting?
Yeah, because what we reject typically gets repeated.
Yes.
So it creates fertile ground for the patterns because underneath all of this, the system wants to be healed and to be looked at. So, so rejection doesn't get you very far. And again, not to excuse anything, but it's really an invitation to look behind and see,
right,
what's the why? What did, and looking, Mark always says just to work closer. Like we typically don't have to go back very many generations. But, like I said, the invitation is still there. And identification is when it's basically a merge with another family member. So an aunt or an uncle or grandmother. Language is a big piece of the diagnosis and intake process when we're working with people. So we're always listening for unusual or quirky language. And one of the cases I use a lot to talk about the identification is a woman who wanted to vaporize and incinerate herself. And it's like, who talks like that? That's very unusual, description of suicidal thoughts. And so she had it all figured out. She had a brother-in-law that worked at a steel mill in Halifax, and she was just going to take a lunch and then continuing walking off the scaffolding and fall into a vat of molten steel. So in working with her, Mark asked, anybody Jewish in your family? And she's like, nope, she's like, nope. And then she went, oh my gosh, my grandmother converted to Catholicism when she married my grandfather. And her whole family was killed in the Holocaust in Auschwitz. And so that's why context can be so helpful, because it gives you, like Mark says, a place to hang your coat. You've just been walking around with these feelings, and then all of a sudden it's like, this doesn't belong to me. Didn't start with me. Mm-hmm. And so that's an identification. And then, like I said, the break in the bond, which is pervasive.
Okay. So we've got the merge, we've got reject, we've got identify.
Yeah.
And sorry, can you just, how does identify differentiate from merge?
It's just, it's not our parents. So it can be a grandparent.
Okay, it's another person. Okay, another part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're identified with a life event.
Okay.
From a family member other than our parents.
And then the break. And so the break, how do we start to play that out when you say the break?
Well, I can send you the list of questions.
Okay.
So there's really trauma questions, and then there's family history questions. Awesome. And then people can look at those and start to answer them, and then
see what happens.
And then the last one, of course, is what's your worst fear? Like if life were to really suck or go off the rails, and it's usually something pretty short. And if you've got like lots of sentences, and we look at trying to drill it down into like a sentence with 5 or 6 words. Some people can have 2 worst fears, and then because not every trauma belongs to us. That's the thing as well. We were doing a masterclass a couple of years ago, and there was this horrific trauma where there was an uncle was piloting a plane and 2 or 3 other family members, they all perished in an accident, but it didn't connect back to the client's issue or worst fear. So so not everything is ours. So it's
Right.
just saying that is kind of your lead to looking back to see what it connects to, and then working with the healing practices.
And you don't discount any feelings that come up, right? If you're going through a story and you're getting emotionally pulled somehow, not even necessarily triggered, you're just, you feel like a tear come up, or you feel your throat start to constrict, right? Like just all of those little things are telltale signs, and our brain will try to shut that off, and we'll find excuses to go, oh, maybe it's just that time of the night where I'm tired, and right. But
there's one other big piece in terms of when you're putting your puzzle together. We talk about it being the ancestral alarm clock. So we're also looking at ages. So life can be going on tickety-boo, that out of left field, we get a curveball, and that takes us sideways. Or a milestone, if we get married, move away, have a child, those can trigger the events. Mark worked with a woman, and she was at a workshop, and it was just like 3 questions in the chair. And she was there because her son had a rare nervous system disorder, and it felt like his skin was on fire. And she'd been to doctors and all the rest. And he said, well, how old was your son when his symptoms first started? And she said 11. He goes, what happened to your husband when he was 11? Because typically boys will carry from the father's side and girls will carry from the mother's side. Except when there's a break, then it's kind of both sides are all game.
Okay, wait, I think we just need to dissect that one a bit. Girls will carry from the mother's side. So how the mothers are nurtured?
And just any trauma from the mother's side of the family.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And boys, and typically, again, nothing's a blanket statement.
Right.
But typically, the oldest child will carry the heaviest. Like most clients we get are the oldest in the family, because they typically get the biggest piece of the pie. I don't know. It's a discovery Bert Hellinger made years ago.
Okay.
That they carry the heaviest piece of the fate.
I feel like that resonated with some people, because I felt that some of you were feeling vindicated there for a minute, going, that's right. That's right.
And then if you're an only child, it's both sides. You're looking at both sides. I mean, you always do look at both sides,
right,
but there's typically a pattern. So just going back to the 11-year-old, the dad had accidentally started a house fire and one of the brothers died. And so unconsciously, the boy is carrying the grief and all of, the emotions. And Mark said, go home, and I can't remember what he said, but he said, go home and have your husband tell your son this, this, and this. Because, and then his symptoms, again, it's also a lesson in detachment, because you never expect an outcome, but you don't do the work, and something usually shifts. So.
Well, Kari, I can't tell you how grateful I am for you to be here and sharing all these messages. I know there's a lot in this call. There's a lot to process. There's a lot to digest for everybody. Kari and I were speaking before the call saying, if there's 30 seconds of this that just kind of sits with you and lands with you, take that. And as Kari says, start putting together the puzzle, right? And you've got tons of support. I'm here for you. We've got lots of Matrix members. Kari is here for you. I'm going to make sure that we repost this video, the recording of it, along with Kari's information, so you can reach out to her. But, I have to say, I know that if you're not in this line of work and haven't been doing any sort of development or self-help, this is probably extremely weighted. But I can tell you from personal experience, having been a part of that circle with the 50 people from around the world, it was amazing to watch how none of us knew one another. I mean, aside from me knowing Kari, but people would get into this hot seat and start to share their story. And it was fascinating to see how some people reacted to the story, some people didn't. And so the lesson in that was, when you react even to somebody else's story, you think on a superficial level, it's like, oh, that's their stuff and I'm just feeling their pain. No, right? No,
I've been going to workshops for 10 years and I still get stuff, it's like the whole onion metaphor, right?
Yeah.
There's still stuff that comes up for healing, and it's beautiful, and it's such a safe environment. And, like you were saying, it just goes to show how we're more alike than not, because really there's only 4 themes.
Yes.
And the plot points can be different.
Yeah.
From family to family in terms of the family story, but it just gets distilled down to these 4 themes, and there's a hierarchy in how we work with them. And the things I've seen, just, I'm just I'm grateful for being sick. It's the other side of the magnet, right? Like I would never have come across this information and healed it the way that I have if I, blessing in disguise.
Yeah, no, well, that's just, I think that everything, it's how that is the gift in life, is choosing to see how we're interpreting different situations, right? And illnesses are usually when we're not dealing with the emotional legacy, right? They start to come out in different ways. And so thank you for inviting me into that circle, however many years that was, because that was a game changer for me. And, a story to end this off with is just, I did that exercise with the drawing on the left-hand side. And I was actually in Calgary at the time. And so I didn't have a picture. And so I took a Sharpie and I doodled my mom and did those words. And it was amazing, because in my dream, in my sleep process, my grandmother actually came and said, your mom can't be here to help right now, but I can. And then she gave me a dream. Like, this is just crazy stuff, right? You couldn't make this up if you tried. She gave me a dream about a baby hippopotamus, and how this, I was just witnessing it, but this baby hippopotamus, this truck, and this truck runs over the mother hippopotamus, and the baby hippopotamus is wailing over the mother hippopotamus, going, where's my mother? Where's my mother? And just the feeling that the mom is not there. And I woke up like snot coming out my nose, right? Like and that was the gift to show me that's what my mother had felt.
Yeah.
That wasn't my story. That was my mother's story, and how that, anyways, it was crazy. So crazy stuff happens when you start doing this work.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
so thank you, everybody. So Kari, you're okay if I share your information?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. And so we really just start to piece the puzzles together. If you're in the matrix, this is all the work that we do in week 2. It's a big part of the money tree, right? And then we get into the inherited piece. And I love that you've layered on to this, Kari, because we don't get into it in this into this granularity. So so grateful for you and the work that you do. We'll make sure that the recording goes out, as well as a link to the 2 videos. And I'll link also to Mark Wolynn's book, It Didn't Start With You. And he's actually writing another one right now, isn't he?
Yeah, it's going to, I think, be around health, and because symptoms are looked at as signposts. So again, just as a benevolence around our symptoms. But I also want to say, just that second video, it's really short. It's 38 seconds. And it just, for those of us who didn't get that experience, use it and imagine yourself as that baby and receiving. It's all about, we're all just practicing to receive. And even if you just, I'm willing to receive, and I still say that, and I can feel my body unwind. And it's been like a couple years since I've been doing that practice, but just practice. And even so if I can just say something really quick, I would go back home to my mom after I was doing this work, and I was like, no, I'm good. I don't need anything. I'm this independent. I can do it. And just thinking this is like something really to be cool and to be proud of.
Yes.
But I had a tummy ache, and I'd gone to my parents, and my mom was like, I had actually told her that I wasn't feeling well, which again was a new practice for me. And she's like, oh, would you like some of my herbs? And normally I'd be like, no, I'm good. And I just went, yes, thank you. So even if I wasn't going to take them, didn't matter. It was just just practice receiving.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So thank you, Kari, for being here and giving and sharing all of your knowledge and your wisdom. I am going to end the recording now, but we'll make sure that this is in the same place where you picked up the link in the first place, so you can come back and rewatch it as many times as you need to. So.